G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and this may be a slightly controversial episode as it does involve members of the wider community. My peers, in fact, on different social media platforms. So, where are we going to go? Well, we're going to talk about influencers, and that is always a touchy topic. So, let me start by telling you a story. It's a story of a company that was founded in the 1970s, which took the ideas of other people and stirred them in a soup of ideas to create their own version of those fantastical worlds. This company grew and grew in popularity, constantly evolving, putting out interesting new products, growing their fantastic worlds. That is until it became publicly traded, and the direction shifted towards the generation of money at the expense of the art form, and this slowly began to dominate the company. This is often the normal way things go with companies, but one curiosity was in how this company adapted as it came of age to new technologies and advancements. You see, most companies were relatively quick to realize the edge that the internet gave them in marketing and sales, setting up online web stores, running promotions, special seasonal sales, etc. This company, however, despite their constant growth, was slow to adopt this strategy, slow to adapt to this new way of conducting business. They still insisted on mail orders, on writing down your order on a piece of paper and enclosing your money transfer in that envelope and posting it across the globe on the understanding that it would end up in the right place. This company had a website. This website was it was a very 90s website, and it showed you the models, but didn't do anything more than that. It didn't function as anything other than an advertisement. Over time, as the company grew, so did their range of miniatures, eventually growing into a virtual monopoly in the miniatures market. This company had a huge range of miniatures, and eventually managed to conjure up an online presence that could actually sell models, and allow the downloading of PDFs and other documents. They took a decade longer than, pretty much every other large company, but this slow start shouldn't be held against the company. This company, one which remained so silent for so long, never talking with the fans, never answering the softball questions of the fans, never dealing with them in any way if they could avoid it, grew into a behemoth. Suddenly, there's a change in the upper leadership. The company decides on a new direction. Let's talk with the fans now. Well, talk is a strong word. Let's create a community where all of our interesting and dynamic hobby blogs can be found. A place to interact with the wider community and create a mutually beneficial space where together the company could create the products that the fans want most. There's of course a slight snag with this plan, however, because the company has a slight issue with two-way communication. This company prefers the approach of, releasing whatever they feel like, and the customer just buys it. Why should the customer's actual wants and desires factor into it at all? An open forum? That's not desirable at all, because what if the feedback is anything but glowing praise? This would not do. So the company, after decades of near silence, finally created some form of interactive content. Heavily moderated, of course. Then the idea struck them. Why not use prominent members within the community with a social media presence to advertise their product? Eureka! They were 10 years behind the rest of the business world, with video games developers and other consumer products already sending out review copies for years and years. Surely, as the cool hip company they are, this hypothetical miniatures company could exploit this phenomena too. Except, there's a slight problem. One that the other businesses had already faced. And that problem was how to handle the review copies. First and foremost, you have to pick trusted reviewers. You can't have any of those pesky negative reviews filtering their way. Transparency is wonderful for building trust, but it just doesn't guarantee sales. No, far better to just pick some safe bets. Then, who are those people? What is the criteria? Is it channel size? following size? Do they have a big presence on Instagram or YouTube? At first, they could be picky. Choose the biggest channels, send them the kits. But soon, the deluge of kits was too much for them to keep up. Too many kits, too fast. How do they build them all, paint them all, play them? Create the review content around them? There isn't enough time to do all that when the company releases so much stuff in so short a time period. The time pressure is too severe. So the company branches out, accepting more and more people into the program. These people are less discerning, happier to sign more and more overtly aggressive agreements, which will grant the company more and more favourable reviews. Things seem to be going very smoothly. But what's this? People aren't buying into the hype quite as much. They're tired of the same old shills. Perhaps. Or perhaps they've come to expect the reviews to all pan out the same way and, well, they want fresh opinions. Perhaps the company can cast a wider net, drawing in smaller influencers who can spread the message to every corner of the internet. Soon it's not the 200,000 subscriber channels or the 70,000 subscriber channels, not even the 20,000 subscriber channels. It's the 5,000, the 1,000, and finally the 200 subscriber channels which are being given products to review. Many of these smaller channels, they're eager for any support and gladly accept the kits. But soon, this too becomes an issue, with unreleased, secret miniatures starting to appear on sites like eBay months before they're supposed to be released to the public. Some figures even leak whole rule sets to the wider community. The company is frustrated by this, upset at the betrayal of trust they didn't earn. How dare these people who are being used as free advertising flip the tables and try to take advantage of the situation? Don't they know their place? Oh well, on to the next marketing gimmick. I hear that the kids are making something called tic-tac-toes these days. Maybe we can put content on that platform too. So ends our totally hypothetical scenario. Now, the influencer trend. The influencer trend, as I'm calling it, is where these people who are given products undertake a very common pattern. First they receive the product, then they partially work on the product, at least enough to say they did one half of a box set. Then they produce content based around this, often showing how to paint one Space Marine in the set or how to build a model, talk about their favourite one, etc. These videos are then turned over onto focusing on the rules of the game itself, and that they received a review for, followed by a trip to Warhammer World if they're lucky, and then the topic is basically almost never seen again. There are social media personalities who do break that mould, but I would by far call them the exception, not the norm. And I also want to point out that this behaviour and the actions of the people are not being pointed out to shame or degrade people in this video, but just to talk about the trend itself. It's perfectly understandable why many people behave in this way, and I'll talk more about that later. Now, with the rise in freebies from Games Workshop making their way out to the public and to the creators, who are also trying to curate an audience which is perpetually craving new kits, this is naturally a relationship which is going to almost always end in one way. Pointless praise. Pointless praise is sadly the end goal of all Games Workshop partnerships, because the creator is only going to ruin their relationship and be blacklisted if they go against the Games Workshop narrative. For better or worse, this is the established narrative now. And, ironically, rather than the community content creators acting as pillars of the community and providing buyers advice and consumer advocacy, in 99 out of 100 situations there is, ironically, no point in consuming the content. Why? Because you know already what's going to be said. Oh, this influencer got a copy of the Leviathan box for Warhammer 40,000 10th edition? I bet they're going to give a scathing review of it. Yeah, nobody ever said that to themselves, did they? Contrast this with some of the review copies sent out in other genres of entertainment, such as video games or movies. It's expected that there will be negative reviews. Maybe not from the Kotakus of the world, but the general public is smart enough to know that, hey, not every Hollywood movie is an 80% or better Grand Slam hit, and reviewers will give you a poor review. Siskel and Ebert were notorious for slamming the slasher genre back in the day, but with Games Workshop this never really happens. If a reviewer gives something like Leviathan a 6 out of 10, do you think they'll be agreed with? And do you think the company would be happy with them? I mean, it's better than 50%. It's in the top half, right? It's better than it is bad. But no, they would be crucified, and you all know it. This is therefore a part of the influencer trend, which we can now summarize as show the box, unbox the contents, paint/build some of the contents, discuss the rules/the system, attend an open day if possible, provide a positive overall opinion of the product you received, and then never discuss the product again. You could also add in wait for the next product at the end of that if you like. This system works this way because the company must drive sales and ever-increasing FOMO at an ever-increasing rate, as the excessive profits they turned during COVID cannot be sustained forever as people leave due to rising costs or due to other factors. Since they aren't at home 24/7 on free money from the government, they aren't buying as much Warhammer. So to sustain those kind of sales levels and the inflated share price of the company, well, they've got to sell more product. My concern is that it's being done at an accelerated rate and being pushed more strongly than ever, really starting with 9th edition's Indomitus box, because of this need to force sales. This need has translated to an accelerated influencer cycle, and this has led to too many influencers being pushed to the edge of what they can physically take on in the time frame allotted, causing them to either knock back boxes, scale back their reviews and content, meaning that to keep up the FOMO, the company must bring on more and more people into their partner scheme, many of whom are bright-eyed optimists, just excited to be there, and they're likely feeling that they've finally made it. And they in turn fall into all of these same traps all over again, repeating the cycle, and more than a few along the way, they just put the models up for sale as they know they'd never get around to actually doing anything with them. Now for the most controversial sector in this video. Women and influencing. A strange and growing trend is the way that women are used to manipulate marketing. The majority of women in the hobby, from my observations, are identical to their male counterparts. They're just hobbyists who want to create miniatures and show off their work. And this is in stark contrast to female influencers, who perform all of the same tricks as their male counterparts, but with one added bonus: sexuality. Warhammer, it's pretty safe to say, mostly appeals to the male demographic, but with a slowly growing female demographic. You can speculate as to why this is all you like. I've got my ideas, but it's not key to the episode, so let's just move on. Now, with the hobby being dominated by men, and with many people who are in the hobby probably being more introverted or outright socially awkward, the chance to engage with a female within the same environment is a recipe for problems. You see, to paint an extreme and unflattering example, the smelly fat nerd at the local game store has a pretty poor chance with approaching a random woman on the street. But you put that same woman at the painting bench in the store, and the smelly nerd thinks to himself, hey, we've probably got a lot in common because we both play Warhammer. Add to this, men and women in this hobby are kind and compassionate, and rather than awkwardly putting down the smelly nerd, they try to be kind and polite, which sadly only encourages the fat smelly nerd, who now thinks to himself, well, she's always nice to me and talks to me. Gee, that's far more than any woman has ever given me before. And suddenly, before you know it, the guy has likely developed misguided feelings towards an unassuming female gamer, all because of well-intentioned behaviours. What does this have to do with the episode? Well, what happens if you take said fat smelly nerd and he's able to engage with his chosen female influencer 24/7? Sure, she may not be online all the time, but her Instagram profile is. He can scroll through that profile over and over, imagining his dream girl based on that perceived online personality, on the way she thanked him for that super chat that one time. This is bad enough when it's a man following a traditional female hobbyist, but when the female on the other end decides to take advantage of the situation, that's when the problems really begin. There has been some debate for some time on the merits of posting images of the hobbyist alongside the miniature. I for one despise the act, because although the person behind the miniature is marketing themselves, which is important for channel growth and such, it is marketing themselves and not the hobby which I'm actually trying to consume. and that's personal taste. This usually takes the form of the hobbyist in question taking a selfie with them holding the miniature. Now, call me an old sexist, but I think it's not much of a stretch to say that you hardly ever see men doing this proportional to women in the game space. I'm going to label this behaviour how I see it, and that is that I do not believe the excuse that this is a proud hobbyist who wants to show off their work. No, to me, the selfie alongside the miniature is an advertisement for the person. Look at me. Not the model, it's too small and too far away to actually see it. At its most base, this is used in selling models on eBay, where for some reason the miniature is placed in front of the breasts of a woman or a very voluptuous man, who really knows, but the tits as a marketing approach is very real. On a less blunt level, it's a female influencer with her fully intact box of miniatures, smiling at the camera with her non-achievement of unopened crap. Congratulations on the purchase, love. Now, men do engage in this behaviour too, so let's not let them off entirely. However, they also tend to rarely put their faces in the picture, lest they become the next soy meme. But for women, we tend to cut them a lot of slack, even validating their decisions and supporting them by emulating their behaviour and hashtags, and we try to normalise it. This is terrible for the health of the actual hobby, in my perception, as we are prioritising the person over the art form, over the actual workpiece. I'm saying all of this not just because of some secret misogyny, probably comes off as that, but because I see the outcomes and I speak with the affected people. Some of the worst affected here are women themselves, as the majority, like I said earlier, are just normal, everyday people going about enjoying their hobby in the same way as you and I, and yet they won't get the recognition they deserve, as now gender is more of a concern than the miniatures. A talented female hobbyist who focuses on sharing her work without people ever realizing it's a woman has a very different social media following and level of support from both the community and the company than the one who shares selfies of herself standing with her miniatures. This phenomena also creates a circle of influence, where an untalented hobbyist gains massive social media praise for underwhelming work due to their gender, leading to the perception of popularity, which leads to influencing. See, I brought it full circle in the end. Influencing in this way also leads to exploitation. These men, the most vulnerable within the gaming community, those who are socially awkward, aren't as good at dealing with the opposite gender, have poor interpersonal skills, possibly poor hygiene, poor looks, etc., are easy to manipulate. I'm not accusing any particular person of this, saying that they do this to others or are the person in question. This is just an example, but I don't have anyone in mind at the time recording. But I've seen it in the past, and I'll give you an example outside of wargaming. Look at what happened with Bella Delphine. You have a woman who was selling a persona for cash, bulk cash. I think she was raking in $6 million per month, able to monetize on desperation. On the one hand, some can defend it. Those guys are idiots for giving her money, it was their choice, etc. But you don't understand. Even I don't fully understand just how lonely some of those men were or are. They were emotionally manipulated into chasing a dopamine hit from an internet personality. It was one thing in their life that made them feel good, made them feel appreciated, that a beautiful girl, or, well, let's face it, maybe an unattractive girl even, but a girl, smiled at them. And I'm nothing but sympathetic towards them in that regard, even if it is all too easy to call them simps. So just to be really clear on this section of the video, women are not the problem. Female influencers are not the problem. Sexuality used as marketing in place of actual content, combined with terrible negative traits of the male consumer, combined with exploitation of human loneliness, are the problems. And these problems are uniquely isolated, unfortunately, to women. And this all happens at the expense of the wider community of women who are fantastic hobbyists and who do the right thing every day. And it is the majority of them. Warhammer video games. Is there ever a more depressing subgenre of influencer than the mobile game shill? I mean, I can understand why people would do it, but the entire point of that market is to give you a free game, get you invested in it enough that they can sell you content in itty bitty microtransactions. What are the reviews like for said games? Yeah. What about the glut of games for PC for Warhammer? There are big name titles, your Total Warhammers, and then, well, next tier down, you've got your Battlefleet Gothic Armadas, your Vermintide, Blood Bowl, Darktide, and then after that, you descend into the bowels of hell, and you find a Warhammer Chaos and Conquest. Another mobile port microtransaction pay to win game jammed onto a PC. Yet, influencers will still say positive things about these games. In fact, many of those games are good games. And they'll say these things especially when they get a cut of the profit. Do they always mention that? Because, yes, I myself have gotten these offers and can tell you what they are. You can sell your soul for as little as 10% of the cut in the worst deals and up to 40% in some of the better ones I've received. If you convince your audience to buy into the game, you get a juicy cut of the action. So logically, this brings us to the final question. Why do people behave in this way? Well, simply put, it's to survive. This is the reason I don't insult those doing it or shame them too much or judge many of their actions. I disagree with them, sure, but fundamentally it's because I'm in a privileged enough position to be able to do so. For many influencers, a large part or even all of their income is derived from the content they create and the way they market themselves. And different people take it to different extremes. Take, for example, a painting studio. One of the quite serious note, in fact, was talking up the Dreadnought torsos when Forge World made the rest of the hobby, or the rest of the body, an out of production item. Sure, it's an awful take, which no one would believe. Right? But what is that influencer supposed to say? Sorry that Forge World discontinued the cool Dreadnought chassis, but if you want to commission me to paint this clear downgrade which costs more, I'm open for work. Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same ring to it, does it now? So can you really judge these people for behaving in that way, especially when their livelihood is on the line? In huge part, I also believe that this phenomena is a small part, a very small part here, of why I'm seen as so salty. And that's because so many of the individuals at the other end of the content spectrum are so glowingly positive that it creates a very hard, extreme divide between my salt and their praise. There is plenty of content in the middle there, but when you think of the extremes, well, you know who you think of. Think about the way content creators leave and don't revisit a product when they're given it for a moment. On the surface, it shows us a very shallow attachment to the product or the item, but what choice do they actually have? The community for that game is a small percentage of all the people watching that person's content, probably. You can either cater to them, or you can just move to the next big release and try and cater to a wider consumer base. This is just encouraged by society, so these creators will do exactly that. I know that it may seem somewhat ironic that of all people, of all channels, it would be this one sticking up for the shills of the world, but I think what I'm doing here isn't really sticking up for them. Rather, I'm just trying to explain that I understand their actions, and for those of you watching, maybe I can explain their actions to you. In summary of the video though, I guess we can call the entire scheme a conflict of interest. And with that, I'll end the episode. Mac with the Outer Circle, thank you all for watching. Please leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one.